Have you ever stumbled upon a mystery so deep that every clue only leads to more confusion? From vanished civilizations and strange coded messages to eerie government secrets, some puzzles don't end, they just drag you further into the rabbit hole. In today's video, we're diving into 10 real-life unsolved mysteries that don't just baffle historians and investigators. They question our entire understanding of reality itself. By the end, you'll be asking, are these coincidences? Or is there something bigger we're not meant to know? Welcome back, truth seekers. In a world filled with information, there still exist secrets no one can explain, enigmas that slip through logic, reason, and even science. These are not just stories. They are threads leading into a labyrinth where every turn opens another secret door. So grab your flashlight, open your mind, and get ready to explore 10 unsolved mysteries that lead straight into the rabbit hole. It's February 1959. Deep within the icy wilderness of the Ural Mountains in Soviet Russia, 9 experienced hikers set out on an expedition that would soon become one of the most chilling mysteries in modern history. The leader, Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student, led a team of skilled mountaineers, young, intelligent, and trained for harsh environments. Their goal was to reach the remote peak of Mount Otorten, but none of them would return alive. The story begins like any other: adventure, optimism, teamwork, and the thrill of the unknown. They laughed, took photos, and kept detailed journals. Each entry was filled with excitement about conquering nature's challenge. But within days, the cheerful words would end. The group radioed that they'd return later than expected because of bad weather. That was the last anyone ever heard from them. When rescuers arrived weeks later, what they discovered sent shivers through every spine. The campsite was eerily silent, half buried in snow. Their tent had been ripped open from the inside. Not by an animal, not by a storm, but by human hands desperately trying to escape something unseen. Scattered footprints led away into the snow barefoot, half-dressed, and in freezing temperatures below -30 degrees Celsius. Why would trained mountaineers run into the deadly cold without proper gear? The next 3 were found between the fire and the tent, as if trying to crawl back. They too showed strange injuries, but it was the last 4 bodies, discovered months later under several feet of snow, that truly baffled investigators. Some had fractured skulls and broken ribs, yet no external wounds. One woman was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips, and traces of radiation were found on their clothing. The official Soviet investigation labeled it a compelling natural force, but what force could do that? Not an avalanche, there were no signs of one. Not hypothermia, some injuries were too severe. Not wild animals, no claw marks, no blood trails. And the radiation? No one could explain how it got there. That's where the theories began. Some say it was a secret military experiment gone wrong, a test of new weapons that released shockwaves or radiation. Others whisper about UFO encounters, pointing to reports of strange orange orbs seen in the sky that same night by witnesses miles away. A few even believe the hikers might have stumbled upon something they were never meant to see, something powerful enough to terrify them into fleeing their tent in panic. But even the physical evidence twists the logic. The footprints showed the hikers were walking calmly, not running. There were no signs of struggle, no enemy, no chase. It was as if they had quietly walked into the storm almost hypnotized. The ripped tent suggests they wanted out fast, but the calm footprints suggest something else entirely. It's as if they were fleeing from something they could feel, but not see. In later years, declassified reports hinted that military operations were taking place near the area that same week. Some locals described glowing spheres hovering over the mountains. Others say the government covered up the truth to hide an experiment gone wrong. Yet, when journalists and researchers tried to dig deeper, documents went missing. Witnesses changed their stories, and the site itself was quietly restricted. Fast forward to decades later, new theories emerged. Some scientists claimed a rare type of avalanche, called the slab avalanche, could explain the ripped tent and some of the injuries. But that still didn't explain the radiation, the missing tongue, and the deep internal damage that looked more like the result of a car crash than falling snow. The hikers' clothes, contaminated with radioactive traces, raised another alarming question: were they somehow connected to a classified test site or nuclear experiment? And then there's the psychological side. Some researchers suggest infrasound low-frequency sound waves caused by wind passing through the mountain could trigger panic and hallucinations. Could these sound waves have driven the hikers into a state of irrational fear, forcing them to flee their tent into the freezing night? Maybe, but even that doesn't explain the physical trauma and the eerie calm of their footprints. The more we examine it, the stranger it becomes. Every answer only opens more questions. Who or what was out there that night in the Urals? Why did the Soviet government close the case so abruptly? Why were their journals censored before being released? Decades have passed, yet every new clue feels like another step deeper into a labyrinth of fear and secrecy. The snow still covers their final resting place, but the questions remain etched into the ice, echoing through time, daring anyone to look closer to find what really happened in that frozen wilderness where 9 lives were lost and one of the most haunting mysteries in history was born. It sits locked away in the Yale University Library, bound in leather, its pages yellowed with age, its words written in a language that no one on earth can read. It's called the Voynich manuscript, and it may just be the most mysterious book ever discovered. For over 600 years, scholars, cryptographers, codebreakers, and even artificial intelligence have tried to unlock its secrets. Yet no one, not one single person, has ever managed to understand it. The story begins in the early 15th century, somewhere in medieval Europe. A scribe, or perhaps a secret group, creates a manuscript filled with more than 200 pages of strange writing and stunningly detailed illustrations. The text flows from left to right, written in a looping script that appears structured almost like a real language. But here is the catch. It's written in an alphabet that exists nowhere else on Earth. No other book, no other document, no trace of the same writing system anywhere. Linguists call it Voynichese, a language that defies every known rule of grammar or syntax. Each page is filled with bizarre drawings, plants that don't exist, constellations that don't match any known stars, and strange diagrams that seem to mix biology, astrology, and chemistry into something otherworldly. Women appear bathing in green liquid, connected by tubes to stars and moons, as if some ancient alchemist tried to draw the blueprint of the universe itself. The ink and parchment have been dated back to the early 1400s, which means this isn't a modern hoax. It's real, it's ancient, and it's completely undecipherable. The manuscript remained hidden for centuries until 1912, when a rare book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich purchased it from an Italian monastery. He was convinced he had found the key to a forgotten science, perhaps even a lost work of genius from the age of Da Vinci. But when experts examined it, confusion spread like wildfire. Every linguist who studied the script agreed it looked like language, but didn't behave like one. It had patterns, repeated word structures, and grammar-like consistency. Yet none of it matched any known language family. During World War II, some of the world's greatest codebreakers, including those who cracked Nazi ciphers, tried to decipher the Voynich manuscript. They used frequency analysis, mathematical models, and early computational techniques. Nothing worked. Even the NSA once took a shot at decoding it, treating it like a top-secret cipher. Decades later, they admitted defeat. And so the theories began. Some believed it was a hoax and elaborate prank designed to fool wealthy collectors of ancient manuscripts. But that theory quickly crumbled. Creating over 200 pages of consistent, meaningful-looking text in a made-up alphabet would require genius-level planning and months, maybe years, of dedication, and for what? No one in the 1400s could have predicted that the book would survive and become famous 6 centuries later. Others suggested it might be an ancient medical or botanical text written in a now-lost language or code. The strange plants might have been symbolic representations of real herbs. The naked women in pools could represent early depictions of anatomy or fertility rituals. But if that's true, why hide the information behind an unbreakable code? What was so secret, so forbidden, that it needed to be disguised in a language no one else could read? Then came the more chilling theories. Some whispered that the Voynich manuscript wasn't of human origin at all, that it could be knowledge, gifted, or stolen from something beyond our world. The astronomical diagrams and plants unknown to Earth add weight to the idea that the book could be describing another realm, another planet, or even an alternate dimension. There are even researchers who pointed out the eerie similarities between the drawings and modern depictions of alien flora and energy systems. More recently, artificial intelligence was brought into the mystery. Linguists fed the text into advanced language models, hoping algorithms could spot patterns humans had missed. The AI came back with strange results. It recognized some syntax and rhythm, but couldn't identify a base language. Some researchers claim the book might be written in an ancient cipher that hides another text underneath. Others proposed it could be a case of glossolalia, or writing produced in a trance-like state, as if someone was channeling information from somewhere or something else. But here's where it gets even stranger. Some parts of the book show astronomical diagrams matching the movement of stars and planets not visible to the naked eye in the 1400s. That kind of accuracy shouldn't have been possible before telescopes were invented. How could someone have known those patterns centuries before modern astronomy? And the book's structure sections that appear to focus on plants, then astrology, then human anatomy seems intentional, almost like a manual or textbook. Some pages show what looks like mechanical systems, pipes, and fluid channels. Were these symbolic? Or was someone documenting technology that existed long before history says it did? The more experts studied it, the more contradictions they found. The parchment is medieval, but the ink may have been applied years later. Some letters are so carefully drawn that it feels like the author wasn't writing, they were encoding. Yet the language remains statistically too structured to be nonsense. It behaves like a real language, one that follows invisible rules, perhaps rules we no longer understand. Today, the Voynich manuscript sits behind glass, protected but silent. Page after page filled with secrets, patterns, and symbols that resist translation. Some believe it hides the knowledge of an ancient civilization. Others think it's the product of a mind far ahead of its time. And there are those who say it's the ultimate test puzzle meant not to be solved, but to remind us that there are still things in this world that lie far beyond our understanding, waiting quietly just beneath the surface of human history. Like a whisper from another world that refuses to fade, it began like any other flight. On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 prepared for takeoff from Kuala Lumpur International Airport, bound for Beijing. On board were 239 people families, business travelers, children completely unaware that they were about to become part of one of the greatest aviation mysteries in modern history. The Boeing 777 was considered one of the safest aircrafts in the world, piloted by Captain Nahari Ahmad Shah, an experienced aviator with over 18,000 flight hours. The weather was clear and everything appeared perfectly normal. Until it wasn't. Less than an hour after takeoff, the aircraft made its last verbal contact with air traffic control as it crossed into Vietnamese airspace. The pilot's calm voice said, "Good night, Malaysian 370. That would be the last known words from MH370. Moments later, the plane disappeared from radar, vanished completely, as if the sky itself had swallowed it whole. Initially, everyone assumed it was a technical glitch. Modern planes don't just disappear. Radar contact is lost for seconds, maybe minutes, but never hours. Yet as time passed, there was no signal, no distress call, no emergency beacon. The plane was simply gone. By morning, the world's attention had turned to the South China Sea, where the aircraft was expected to be. Dozens of ships, planes, and satellites began a desperate search. But they found nothing. No debris, no oil slicks, no wreckage, nothing at all. It was as if flight MH370 had taken off and then flown straight into another dimension. Then came the first shocking revelation. Military radar from Malaysia and Thailand showed that, after disappearing from civilian radar, the plane had turned sharply off course. Instead of heading northeast toward Beijing, it banked west, crossing the Malaysian peninsula and heading out into the vast Indian Ocean. That turn wasn't part of any normal route, it was deliberate. Someone had changed the course. The transponder, which identifies the aircraft to radar systems, had been manually turned off. Only someone inside the cockpit could have done that, but why? What could cause an experienced pilot or anyone to take control of a passenger jet and vanish into one of the most remote parts of the planet? Theories began flooding in, each one stranger than the last. Some believed it was a hijacking, others thought it was a pilot suicide, and a few whispered darker ideas: government cover-ups, secret cargo, even extraterrestrial interference. Weeks turned into months, and search teams scoured over 120,000 square kilometers of ocean floor. Not a trace. Satellite data eventually showed that the aircraft flew for nearly 7 more hours after losing radar contact, following a mysterious looping route before vanishing somewhere over the southern Indian Ocean. But even that data was indirect. It came from brief handshakes, automated pings between the plane and a communications satellite. The exact location, still unknown. Families of the passengers clung to hope, refusing to believe that a plane could vanish in an age of GPS, satellites, and global surveillance. They demanded answers, but every answer led to new questions. Some experts suggested that Captain Zahari may have intentionally diverted the flight, perhaps as an elaborate suicide. But those who knew him described a calm, disciplined professional, devoted to his family and his job. No one close to him believed he was capable of such an act. Then fragments began to appear, small pieces of the aircraft washed up on remote beaches thousands of miles away, a wing flap in Reunion Island, a piece of the fuselage in Mozambique, other debris near Madagascar. Each discovery confirmed what investigators already suspected, that the plane had gone down in the southern Indian Ocean, but none of the debris could explain why. The black boxes, which record the flight data and cockpit conversations, were never found. Without them, the mystery remained sealed. Some analysts pointed to the cargo manifest. Among the items on board were lithium batteries and several tons of unlisted electronic equipment. Was there something more inside that plane? Something that certain governments didn't want found? Others noted that several passengers were high-ranking scientists and defense engineers from major technology firms. Was MH370 carrying sensitive materials or information that had to be erased from existence? Then came another strange detail. According to radar data, the aircraft's altitude fluctuated wildly in the minutes after contact was lost, dropping thousands of feet, then climbing again, almost as if the plane was being manually flown to evade detection. This wasn't the behavior of a plane in distress. It was controlled, precise, intentional. Whoever was in control knew exactly what they were doing. Even years later, official investigations failed to offer closure. The Malaysian government concluded that the flight path could not have been accidental, yet no motive or perpetrator could be proven. Boeing and international aviation experts remained baffled. Some investigators privately claim that the flight may have been commandeered remotely using a technology designed to override hijackings. If true, it would mean someone, somewhere, had the power to take control of a commercial jet midder and make it vanish without a trace. The absence of wreckage, the silence of the black boxes, and the sheer precision of the course change create an unsettling question. Was MH370 the victim of a tragic accident, or was it part of something larger, something intentionally hidden from the world? To this day, the official line says the plane lies somewhere deep beneath the waves of the southern Indian Ocean, but others believe it was diverted elsewhere, perhaps landed, perhaps destroyed, its evidence wiped clean. And if that's true, the biggest question isn't just where the plane went, but why? What secret was carried aboard that flight? Who wanted it gone? And how, in an age where every move is tracked, could a 200-ton jet simply disappear into the night, leaving behind only whispers, fragments, and a silence that grows more haunting with every passing year? It was a cold morning on December 1st, 1948, when beachgoers in Adelaide, Australia, discovered a man's body lying on the sand near Somerton Beach. He was dressed sharply in a pressed suit and polished shoes, as if he had just stepped out of an office rather than onto the shore. His body was positioned neatly, his head resting against the seawall, his arms by his sides. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of violence, and strangely, no identification of any kind. No wallet, no labels on his clothes, no clue to who he was or how he had died. From that moment, the Somerton Man mystery began, and more than 70 years later, it remains one of the most haunting unsolved cases in modern history. When police first arrived, they were puzzled. The man's appearance was almost too perfect. His suit was clean, his shoes spotless, and his body showed no external injuries. In his pockets, officers found a train ticket to Henley Beach, a pack of chewing gum, some cigarettes, and a pack of matches. Nothing unusual except for one curious detail. Every clothing tag had been carefully cut out. Whoever he was, someone, or maybe he himself, had gone to great lengths to erase his identity. The autopsy made the story even stranger. The pathologist found no sign of violence or poisoning. Yet the man's organs were unusually congested, suggesting he may have ingested something toxic. However, no trace of any known poison could be found in his system. It was as if he had been killed by something undetectable, something that left no mark. The cause of death was listed as unknown. Weeks went by, and still no one came forward to claim the body. The man didn't match any missing persons in Australia. His fingerprints were sent around the world to the UK, the US, and beyond, but no matches were found. Then, a small discovery added another layer to the mystery. While examining the man's clothing again, investigators found a tiny rolled-up piece of paper hidden inside a secret pocket of his trousers. On it were two words printed in elegant Persian script, Tamam Shud. Translated, it meant, "It is finished." The phrase was traced back to an obscure book of Persian poetry called the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. When police made this connection, they issued a public appeal to locate a copy of the book that might explain the note. Days later, a man came forward claiming he had found a copy of the Rubaiyat discarded in the back seat of his car, parked not far from Somerton Beach. When the book was examined, it was missing its final page, the very page that contained the words Tamam Shud. But that wasn't the only discovery. Inside the back cover of the book, faint pencil markings revealed a strange series of letters and apparent code. It read, Robabdem El, Iaoi Twitimpanet Mayaboaek Ibsamstab. The sequence didn't match any known cipher, language, or military code. Cryptographers from around the world tried to solve it. Some thought it was an encrypted message. Others believed it could be initials representing words, perhaps even a personal message or coordinates. To this day, no one has managed to decode it. And then came an even more mysterious link. Investigators discovered that the book's original owner might have been a young nurse named Jessica Thompson, who lived only a few blocks from where the body was found. When police visited her, she seemed nervous, even frightened. She claimed she didn't know the man, but when she was shown his plaster death mask, witnesses said she nearly fainted. Her reaction was so intense that officers believed she was hiding something. She refused to speak publicly about the case ever again. Years later, suspicion grew that Jessica might have had a secret relationship with the Somerton Man or that he was connected to intelligence work. During the late 1940s, the Cold War was beginning, and Adelaide was home to secret research facilities and defense projects. The man's mysterious code, his unknown poison, and the absence of identification all fit the pattern of espionage. Some theorized he was a spy, perhaps caught in a deadly exchange. Silence before revealing a secret that could change the balance of power. Even the items he carried hinted at something unusual. His suitcase, later found at a railway station, contained ordinary clothes but also a stencil kit used for marking cargo, an item often used by naval or intelligence workers. The contents suggested he was either preparing for a journey or had just completed one. But once again, every label in the suitcase had been removed. Decades passed, and new forensic techniques offered glimpses of possible answers, yet none solved the riddle. DNA testing in recent years has provided a partial genetic profile suggesting that the Somerton Man may have been of European descent, possibly with distant ties to an American engineer. But it only deepens the intrigue. Why was he in Australia, and who wanted him erased so completely that even his name disappeared from history? Even stranger is the eerie coincidence surrounding Jessica Thompson's son. Years after the case, genetic analysis hinted that her child might be related to the Somerton Man, suggesting a secret relationship that she denied until her death. If true, it could explain her fear, her silence, and her refusal to reveal what she knew. Every detail of the Somerton case feels like a layer of a puzzle hidden within another puzzle. A man found dead with no cause of death, a torn page with a cryptic phrase, an unbreakable code, and a woman whose connection may hold the key to the entire mystery. Even now, forensic experts, historians, and amateur detectives across the world continue to dig through archives hoping that one overlooked clue might finally reveal the truth about the man from the beach who carried a message that simply read, "It is finished," yet left behind a story that refuses to end. High above our planet in the vast darkness of space, something orbits. It's not a satellite we launched, not a piece of modern space junk, and not something that belongs to any known country. It's called the Black Knight satellite, and for decades it has hovered in mystery. A dark object circling Earth in a near-polar orbit that predates our very first satellite launches. To some, it's an alien probe watching us. To others, it's a forgotten relic of an ancient civilization, or even a government secret hidden in plain sight. Whatever it is, it's one of the strangest unsolved enigmas of the modern age. The story begins not in the space age, but far earlier. In 1899, inventor Nikola Tesla was experimenting with radio transmissions from his Colorado Springs laboratory. Late one night, he reported receiving unusual signals, repetitive pulses that he believed were not random static, but intelligent communication from somewhere beyond Earth. Tesla became convinced that he had intercepted messages from an extraterrestrial source. Many dismissed his claim at the time, but decades later, researchers revisited his notes and realized something eerie. The signals he recorded matched frequencies that would have been consistent with a reflective object orbiting the Earth. Fast forward to 1928, when amateur radio operators across Europe began reporting similar mysterious echoes. They would transmit a signal and receive it back several seconds later, a phenomenon now known as the delay was far too long to be caused by the ionosphere or known atmospheric interference. It was as if the signals were bouncing off something massive and metallic high above the planet, something in orbit that wasn't supposed to be there. Then came 1954, when newspapers began reporting claims from U.S. Air Force sources that two unidentified satellites had been detected orbiting the Earth 3 years before the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first official human-made satellite. At that time, no nation possessed the technology to place an object in orbit, yet radar systems were tracking something large moving high above. The press dubbed it the mystery satellites, but after a few days, the story mysteriously vanished from headlines. In 1960, the U.S. Navy's tracking systems picked up a dark object in polar orbit, a type of orbit that passes over both poles, ideal for surveillance. It was moving faster than expected and didn't match the trajectory of any known satellite. The object was described as dark, tumbling, and irregular. Defense officials initially claimed it was a piece of a lost American satellite, but astronomers quickly noticed inconsistencies. The orbit didn't match any American or Soviet launches. Whatever it was, it shouldn't have been there. Photographs taken during space missions later showed a black, oddly shaped object drifting above Earth. The most famous of these images came from NASA SSTS-88 mission in 1998. The photographs show what appears to be a dark, angular structure silhouetted against the planet's blue horizon. NASA dismissed the images as a piece of thermal blanket accidentally released during a spacewalk, but many weren't convinced. The object's shape, movement, and the way it reflected light didn't match the characteristics of a flimsy piece of debris. And strangest of all reports of the Black Knight's existence, predated the 1998 mission by nearly a century. Some researchers believe the Black Knight is an ancient alien probe left in orbit to observe humanity's progress. According to this theory, the object might be thousands of years old, placed here long before our recorded history began. A Scottish astronomer named Duncan Lunan once analyzed the strange radio echoes recorded decades earlier and claimed to have decoded a hidden message. He said it originated from the Epsilon Buddhist star system, roughly 200 light-years away, and that it had been transmitted to Earth via a satellite, placed in orbit thousands of years ago by beings monitoring our planet. Others think the Black Knight could be a relic from a lost human civilization, a technological artifact from a time before recorded history. Evidence that advanced societies once existed and achieved spaceflight long before we did. Ancient myths from multiple cultures speak of gods descending from the stars or beings who ruled from the heavens. Could the Black Knight be a remnant of that forgotten era, proof of a story humanity buried in time? Skeptics, of course, offer simpler explanations. They argue it's nothing more than a combination of misidentified space debris, classified military hardware, and coincidental radio phenomena. NASA's thermal blanket explanation remains the official story, but even that raises questions. Why did early radar systems detect something decades before any spacewalks ever happened? Why did it appear in orbits unreachable by 1950s technology? And how do we explain the centuries-old radio anomalies that seem connected to an orbiting object long before human satellites existed? Adding to the mystery are claims from several astronauts who, over the years, have spoken of strange objects following their missions, unidentified craft, or metallic shapes that didn't correspond to any known satellites. NASA often attributes these sightings to reflections, lens flares, or space debris. Yet the consistency of the reports keeps fueling suspicion that something else is out there. Even modern telescopes occasionally pick up unidentified dark objects passing through high-altitude orbits that don't match catalog satellites. Amateur astronomers have attempted to track the supposed Black Knight, but every time they think they've found it, it seems to vanish, reappearing weeks or months later in a different location, as if it's deliberately avoiding detection. The most chilling part of the mystery is the pattern. From Tesla's mysterious signals to modern-day radar anomalies, it all seems connected threads of evidence stretching across more than a century. Something has been there, watching silently, orbiting just out of reach, occasionally revealing itself before disappearing again. Whether it's alien, ancient, or man-made, the Black Knight defies logic and explanation. Its existence challenges everything we think we know about human history and our place in the universe, hovering above us in the cold silence of space, patient, waiting, as if guarding a secret humanity I sent ready to discover. Imagine waking up one day to find that the world around you has changed in small but unmistakable ways. A logo looks different, a movie line isn't what you remember, and even maps seem to have shifted. You ask others, and some agree they remember it the same way you do. But others insist you're wrong, that it's always been this way. This eerie phenomenon has come to be known as the Mandela Effect, and it's one of the most fascinating and unsettling mysteries of our time. It challenges not just our memory, but our very sense of reality itself. The name Mandela Effect comes from a bizarre mass memory shared by thousands of people who distinctly remember that Nelson Mandela died in prison during the 1980s. They recall seeing news coverage, hearing world leaders speak about his death, even watching televised tributes. But here's the twist: Mandela didn't die in the 1980s. He was released from prison in 1990 and went on to become the president of South Africa. He passed away peacefully in 2013. So how did so many people vividly remember an event that never happened? That question opened the door to something much bigger. Once the Mandela example spread online, others began reporting similar shared, false memories, details from pop culture, geography, history, and even brand logos that didn't match the current reality. People insisted the Berenstain Bears children's books used to be spelled Berenstein. They swore Darth Vader said, "Luke, I am your father," in Star Wars, when the line is actually, "No, I am your father." They remembered the Monopoly man wearing a monocle, even though he never had one. And they claimed the Fruit of the Loom logo always had a cornucopia behind the fruit, except now it doesn't. These may sound like small details, but when millions of people share the same exact false memories, the question becomes impossible to ignore. Are we all misremembering reality, or has reality itself changed? Psychologists and neuroscientists have their explanations. They say the Mandela Effect is the result of confabulation, our brains filling in gaps in memory with logical assumptions. Memory isn't a recording. It's a reconstruction. Every time we recall something, we slightly rewrite it, often blending imagination and fact. Combine that with social reinforcement, people agreeing on the same error, and an illusion of truth emerges. Essentially, our collective memory creates a version of reality that feels just as real as the truth. But for many, this explanation feels incomplete. The sheer consistency across millions of people suggests something deeper. That's where the more mind-bending theories come in. Some believe the Mandela Effect could be proof of parallel realities or alternate timelines. Intersecting? According to this theory, we may be experiencing glitches between different versions of our universe, where tiny details from one timeline slip into another. In one reality, Mandela died in prison. In another, he lived. Perhaps at some point these timelines converged, leaving behind traces of both. Quantum physicists have long theorized that multiple universes might exist side by side, each branching off with every decision, every random event, every possibility. Could it be that our consciousness occasionally shifts between these realities, carrying memories that don't match the new timeline? It sounds like science fiction, but even mainstream quantum theory suggests that reality isn't as fixed as we once believed. On the subatomic level, particles can exist in multiple states at once until observed. If the fabric of reality is that flexible, perhaps memory is the only anchor we have, and maybe even that isn't stable. Others turn to the digital age for answers. In a world where information spreads and mutates faster than ever, could the Mandela Effect be amplified by the internet itself? Millions of people repeating the same error online can solidify a false version of history in collective consciousness. Digital archives, movie remasters, logo redesigns, everything changes subtly over time, blurring our grasp of what was ever truly real. It is possible that the Mandela Effect is the result of a feedback loop between human memory and digital misinformation, where both reshape the other in an endless cycle. Yet there are still cases that make even skeptics uneasy. Entire geographic locations seem to have shifted in public memory countries, appearing slightly off on maps, landmarks remembered in different places, and even famous historical events described in ways that official records don't support. How can so many people independently recall the same incorrect version of something with such conviction? Some have even connected the Mandela Effect to theories about simulated reality, the idea that we might be living in a kind of cosmic computer program, where small updates or glitches cause inconsistencies. When the simulation changes, so does our world, but some of us remember the old version. The wrong movie lines, the misplaced objects. The altered history all could be fragments of earlier versions of the program that weren't fully deleted. And then there's the unnerving feeling that comes with it, the sense that you've caught reality making a mistake. People who experience the Mandela Effect often describe a deep emotional reaction, a mix of wonder and fear. It's not just about remembering things differently, it's about questioning everything you thought was solid. If your memories can't be trusted, what else can't? If reality can shift, even in small ways, who or what is controlling those shifts? The Mandela Effect forces us to look inward and outward at the same time. It makes us question the reliability of our own minds and the stability of the universe around us. Whether it's a psychological quirk, a product of digital confusion, or evidence that we are slipping between alternate realities. One thing is certain: once you start noticing the inconsistencies, you can't unsee them. And suddenly the world feels just a little bit less certain, as if somewhere, in the quiet corners of existence, reality itself is flickering, rewriting, and daring us to notice the changes before they vanish again. So, after journeying through these 10 unsolved mysteries, the strange disappearances, bizarre coincidences, secret experiments, lost civilizations, and the Mandela Effect that bends our very sense of reality, one thing becomes clear: the deeper we dig, the stranger the world becomes. Each mystery starts as a simple question, but the moment we try to find the truth, we tumble down a rabbit hole where facts blur, logic bends, and answers slip further away. Maybe that's the real secret hiding behind all of this: truth isn't always buried. Sometimes it's fragmented, scattered across timelines, lost to time, or hidden in plain sight. Whether it's a government cover-up, a parallel universe, or just the human mind playing tricks on itself. These stories remind us that the world is far more mysterious than we dare to admit. Because when you chase these mysteries long enough, you start to realize something haunting. You're not just exploring strange events from history. You're uncovering the limits of human understanding itself. And maybe, just maybe, that's what makes the rabbit hole so irresistible. The deeper we go, the more we realize that reality is not as solid as it seems, and that some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed.